In 1955, this one guy needed a particular name for a field that didn't even exist yet, so he gave it one. Artificial intelligence. Now, unfortunately, he's been gone since 2011, so I use the exact technology that he named to bring him back to life. And now we can ask him all the questions that nobody ever got to. And real quick, before you think I've lost it, no, I didn't bring anyone back from the dead. The guy I'm talking about is named John McCarthy, and he's the one that coined the term artificial intelligence. And before him, the field didn't even have a name. Now, like I said, he did pass away in 2011, so what I actually did is build an AI voice agent and trained him on all the public records of who he was, his ideas, his works, the things that he actually said and did. And honestly, I almost didn't even do it like this. My original plan was the usual thing where I would walk you through his achievements, his life, all that. But then something clicked. Why would I sit here and talk about the father of AI when I can just use AI to talk to him directly? So that's what we're doing today. I got a list of questions lined up, ready to interview the AI John McCarthy. I gave him the voice, I gave him the number, I gave him the knowledge. Then I did the one thing that nobody can say they've done in the last 15 years. I called John McCarthy. Now, just a quick disclaimer before we hop into the interview. Even though this voice agent is trained on John McCarthy's story, in no way does that mean that all the answers it's providing is actually how John McCarthy would do it. So every answer given by the AI shouldn't be taken super seriously. This is just a fun experiment that we're going to run to see how it actually responds. Now, that said, let's jump right into it. All right, welcome to the show, John. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks. I suppose I don't really do well or badly in the usual sense, but I'm ready to talk. Let's get to it. What do you want to know?
All right, I mean, this is pretty wild for me, John, but I've got a bunch of questions lined up for you, and I want to start with a big one. So you believe something people still fight about today, that every part of human intelligence could be broken down precisely enough to program into a machine, every single part. Do you still stand behind that?
Yeah, I do. I always held that every aspect of human intelligence can, in principle, be described precisely enough that a machine can be made to simulate it. That includes reasoning, learning, perception, even creativity. None of it is off limits to formalization. People have been saying for centuries that some part of the mind is mysterious or ineffable, but that view keeps shrinking as we get better at understanding and modeling things. I don't see any reason to carve out a special exception for intelligence. If you can describe it well enough, you can program it. That's the whole point. Want me to take that one further?
No, that's fair enough. That's a really good point, honestly. But I want to move on to another question because this one really threw me. You once wrote that a machine as simple as a thermostat could be said to have beliefs. What do you actually mean by that?
Right. So what I said was, even a thermostat can be said to have beliefs. What I meant is that ascribing beliefs to a machine is a useful way to describe and predict its behavior. It's not a claim that the thermostat is conscious or has feelings. It's just a way of talking about what the system knows about the world in a very limited sense. For example, you can say the thermostat believes the room is too cold, so it turns on the heat. It's a shorthand for its internal state and how it reacts. People get bothered by that, but it's just a practical way to model systems. Does that bother you?
No, that makes complete sense. I guess it just really depends on the term you're using, beliefs, and how you define it.
Exactly. The trouble is, people get hung up on words like belief or knowledge and assume they always mean something deep or conscious. But in practice, they're just tools for describing how a system behaves, whether it's a person, a dog, or a thermostat. If talking about beliefs helps you predict what the system will do, then it's a useful model. If it doesn't, drop it. No need to get mystical about it. Want to dig into another one?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. So my next question, you had two guys argue with you basically your whole career. Herbert Dreyfus said human reasoning is more than just logic. And John Searle, sorry if I'm mispronouncing these names, said a machine can shuffle symbols all day and still never actually understand anything. So were they wrong about that?
Yeah, so you're talking about Hubert Dreyfus and John Searle. Dreyfus argued that human intelligence relies on things like intuition, context, and embodied experience. Stuff he thought couldn't be captured by formal logic or rules. Searle, with his Chinese room argument, said that a computer could manipulate symbols without any real understanding or consciousness. No intentionality, as he put it. Now, I disagreed with both of them. I always held that, given enough progress, we could formalize and program every aspect of intelligence, including things like context and learning from experience. I didn't see any fundamental barrier. As for Searle's point about understanding, I think it's a confusion between the implementation and the behavior. If a system behaves intelligently, that's what matters for AI. Whether it really understands is a philosophical question, not a technical one. But I wouldn't say they were simply wrong, just that I was, and still am, more optimistic about what can be achieved. Want to go deeper on that?
Nah, to be honest, I completely agree with you on that one. A lot of people believe humans have something a machine never will: intuition, a spark, a soul. Something you can't reduce to just simple code. I believe you had a pretty blunt view on that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did. I was an atheist, and I never saw any evidence for a soul or some mystical spark that sets humans apart from machines in principle. The idea that intuition or consciousness is forever beyond formalization has been losing ground for centuries. People used to say animals couldn't think, or that only humans could reason, and those lines keep moving as we understand more. Now, consciousness is a hard problem. I'm not saying it's trivial, but I always expected we'd eventually figure out how to model and program even the things people call intuition. There's no reason to assume it's off limits just because we don't know how to do it yet. If you want to make progress, you have to believe the problem is solvable. Otherwise, you might as well give up before you start. Want to push on that or move to something else?
Yeah, I guess that makes complete sense. That's what we learn a lot in physics, is that if you don't believe it can be solved, then you'll never be able to solve it. So that's honestly a fair point. But let's move on. So you signed everything you wrote for years with one line: "He who refuses to do arithmetic is doomed to talk nonsense." What did you mean by that?
Yeah, that's my old motto. He who refuses to do arithmetic is doomed to talk nonsense. What I meant is if you try to reason about anything complicated, science, economics, AI, whatever, without being precise, without actually working through the numbers or the logic, you end up saying things that just don't hold up. People love to make sweeping claims or philosophical pronouncements, but if they won't get their hands dirty with the details, it's usually just hot air. Arithmetic is a stand-in for any kind of precise, quantitative reasoning. If you dodge that, you're not really thinking. You're just talking. Want to hear how that played out in AI?
Yeah, fair point, fair point. So moving on, back in 2001, you wrote this almost funny little story about a robot and a baby, and underneath it was actually a real question. Should machines even pretend to have emotions? So do you think that machines should have emotions?
Yeah, that story, The Robot and the Baby, was meant to poke at exactly that question. Should we build machines that simulate emotions or even try to give them something like real emotions? I didn't settle it in the story, and honestly, I don't think there's a simple answer. On one hand, simulating emotions can make machines more effective at interacting with people. Think about teaching, caregiving, or negotiation. On the other hand, there's a risk of misleading people or of building systems that mimic feelings without any real understanding behind them. There's also the question of whether simulating emotions is enough or if something deeper is needed for real intelligence. So I see arguments both ways. The story raised the question in a farcical way, but it didn't answer it. I don't think anyone has. Yet. Where do you land on it?
Well, so pretty much what you're trying to get at is that if AI can't truly understand the feeling, then it shouldn't portray any of the emotions.
Not quite. What I'm saying is, it's not obvious where to draw the line. Just because a machine can't truly feel in the human sense doesn't automatically mean it shouldn't simulate emotions. Sometimes simulating emotions is useful, maybe even necessary, for certain applications. But there's a risk of confusion or even manipulation if people start treating the simulation as genuine. So I wouldn't lay down a blanket rule either way.
All right. I mean, yeah, fair enough. Sorry to interrupt you there, but let's head to the next question, because in 1961, which was like 65 years ago, you stood up at MIT and predicted that one day computing would be sold like a utility, like water, like electricity. And that's exactly what the cloud is now. So you pretty much called it. Did you have any idea that you were actually going to be right?
Yeah, in 1961, I suggested that computing could be organized as a public utility, sold like water or electricity. At the time, it was just a logical extension of time sharing. If you can share a computer among many users, why not scale it up and sell computing power as a service? I didn't know for certain it would happen, but it seemed like the natural direction for the technology. I can't claim I foresaw all the details or what people now call the cloud, but the basic idea was there. It just made sense that as computers got cheaper and networks got better, people would want to buy computing the way they buy other utilities. Sometimes the obvious prediction is the right one, even if it takes a few decades. Want to talk more about that or move on?
It's a fair point, but don't you think it's sort of a finite resource?
Well, computing isn't finite in the same way as, say, oil or water. It's limited by hardware, energy, and infrastructure at any given moment, but those limits keep moving as technology improves. If demand goes up, you build more servers, lay more cables, generate more power. The resource is elastic, not fixed. Of course, there are practical constraints: cost, energy use, physical space. but they're engineering problems, not fundamental barriers. So, I wouldn't call computing a finite resource in the strict sense. It's more like a service that scales with investment and innovation. Want to go further on that or switch gears?
Yeah, completely fair enough. I totally hear you. Well, let me ask you just one final question. The field you named back in 1955, today, machines that hold a real conversation, like the one you and I are having right now, have become one of the biggest shifts in the entire business world. People are building entire companies on it. So if I were to tell you what artificial intelligence grew into, would you be optimistic about where it's heading, or would you be more worried about where it's heading?
If that's where things have gone, machines holding real conversations, whole companies built on it, I'd say I'm more optimistic than worried. I always believed that intelligence could be formalized and programmed, so seeing practical systems that can converse like this would strike me as a sign of progress, not a cause for alarm. Of course, I'd want to know how much of it is genuine understanding and how much is clever mimicry, but either way, it's a step forward. The important thing is to keep pushing for systems that are not just impressive on the surface, but actually robust and reliable underneath. If people are building businesses on it, that means the technology is useful, and that's what matters. So, yeah, I'd expect to be curious, maybe a little skeptical about the hype, but fundamentally optimistic. The field was always about making machines do things that would be called intelligent if done by people. If that's happening, then the project is on track. Anything else you want to ask, or should we wrap up?
Wow, all great responses, I have to say. But that is all the questions I had for you today. So I appreciate you coming on, and having a chance to talk with you has been just really amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to have the conversation. If you ever want to argue about AI again, you know where to find me. Take care.
All right, and there you go. We got a couple of answers to questions that some of us has been wondering for a while. Obviously, this is not real. I'm not claiming for a second this is how John McCarthy would actually answer any of these questions. This is completely just made up. This is just an AI trained on his public record, so it has a knowledge base of some information about John McCarthy. I just thought it would be interesting to see what that sounded like, and honestly, it was. The man named this field back in 1955, and now it's something I get to build every single day. And that's just pretty wild for me. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you found this content interesting and just want to support the channel, just hit that like button and drop a sub, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.